So back in the day, which I believe was 2022, I recapped House of Earth and Blood for you guys in a 10-page back and front document, and today we are going to be recapping House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas in a 14-page document this time. So I am repping our big daddy Hunt Athalar today in my Umbra Mortis hoodie. As y'all know, I am a big fan of Crescent City. I'm not a massive fan of this book though, and I actually sadly enjoyed it even less upon reread, but your girl gotta do what she gotta do, and we have a recap to get through. So I have, as I mentioned, already recapped House of Earth and Blood in the past. I will link that for you guys if you want to check it out. These videos are essentially for people who do not have time to reread. They are very, very detailed. They are also great for people who have reread, but if you want to just blast through with the facts before you go into House of Flame and Shadow, then you can watch these two videos back to back and jump straight in. And also, this video is going to contain spoilers. I feel like that's pretty obvious. So if you haven't read these books, maybe don't watch these videos, but if you are somebody who does not want to read these books but wants the tea, then these videos will also serve as that for you as well. So if you have not watched my House of Earth and Blood recap video, I would recommend that you go do that ahead of this one, because if there's any terminology that is included in this book that I haven't explained in this video, it's because I've already explained it in House of Earth and Blood. And just as a final note, if you guys are watching this around the time of the release of House of Flame and Shadow, please do not put any spoilers or anything about House of Flame and Shadow in my comments. But without further ado, do I have water? Because I feel like I'm gonna need it. I do. Without further ado, let us get into everything that happened in House of Sky and Breath. House of Sky and Breath opens up in Kavala, the most notorious of the Asteres Panjaren death camps, where humans and rebels from the war are imprisoned and patrolled by dreadwolves. Here we are introduced to Sophie, an Ophion rebel who has infiltrated Kavala to extract an important asset, her brother Emil. Sophie and her brother are both human, yet they possess the powers of the legendary Thunderbird, an ability that allows them to generate and control electricity and other forms of energy such as first light. The gift was passed on to their bloodline from their great-grandmother, who mated a human. At this point, their kind have been hunted almost to extinction by the Asteri. Sophie's brother was taken prisoner 3 years ago when the siblings' parents were revealed as rebels and tortured, their grandparents also executed. Sophie has spent the last 3 years gathering intel to help find her brother. She eventually convinced Pippa Spetsos, the leader of an elite Ophion unit called Lightfall, to allow her to attempt to free Emil in exchange for valuable information that could end their war with the Asteri for good. Sophie manages to locate her brother in Kavala, breaking him and a group of malnourished children out of the camp, meeting up with the mysterious Agent Silverbow, Sophie's lover, who bundles the group into a van and drives them to a boat waiting to transport them out of Panjara at the port city of Servast. The group arrives in Servast to find the dreadwolves lying in wait for them. Sophie urges Agent Silverbow to get the children to safety while she holds off the wolves. Lydia Servus, an elite dreadwolf known as the Hind, is leading the hunt for Sophie. Sophie unleashes her power, killing most of the wolves pursuing her, and races to the docks in hopes that she can join the others before the boat departs. A sniper shoots her in the thigh with a Gaussian bullet, stifling her magic and any hope she had of escape. Our perspective switches to Pippa, who awaits the arrival of Emil on the Bodegraven that is now being pursued by 4 submersible warships. Pippa prepares to defend Bodegraven, but realizes her aid is unnecessary as all of the lights in the city of Servast wink out one by one, the energy being redirected by Emil to eliminate the pursuing warships, proving Emil to be more powerful than his sister and a very valuable asset to Ophion, despite only being 13 years old. Sophie lies bleeding out on the docks. The Hind bundles her into a boat, and after ascertaining that Sophie hasn't shared the important intel that she has gathered, dumps her overboard, where she sinks to the seabed, assumedly dead. Meanwhile, in Lunathion, Bryce is attending the ballet with her parents, Ember and Randall. They start to admire a frieze of Fey male depicted with a hammer and lightning titled The Meeking of the Sword in Old Fey. Randall mentions that it reminds him of Hunt. Hunt joins the group a little bit later on and trades flirtatious banter with Bryce. As the sexual tension spikes, she regrets making a deal with him that they wouldn't progress their relationship romantically until winter solstice, taking the summer and fall to get to know each other as friends. The lights drop as the performance is about to start, start, and the star-shaped scar on Bryce's chest inconveniently starts to emit starlight. She mentions that it flares seemingly at random and she doesn't know how to make it stop. After the ballet, Bryce and Hunt head to a party at Rune's house. The group are having a great time until Hunt receives an email from Isaiah announcing the new archangels that will be replacing Micah and Sandriel as region governors. Celestina, governor of a very small region in Nenya, has been chosen to replace Micah. Fury and Hunt both comment that they haven't heard anything bad about her, which Hunt finds more suspicious than comforting. He muses that she may be a puppet for the Asteri. The party is interrupted when Cormac arrives, Rune's cousin and prince of the powerful Everand Fae. Rune, Declan and Flynn make it clear that he isn't welcome, but Cormac insists he was invited, revealing that the Autumn King has made a marriage pact with the High King of the Everand Fae, and Bryce is to be his bride. When Cormac leaves, Rune tells the group that the animosity between himself and Cormac stems from his ordeal, a personal trial or hardship that Fae must overcome before making the drop. Cormac, as prince of the Everand Fae, always believed that he would inherit the Star Sword, an ancient Everand weapon. When Rune managed to retrieve the sword before him, Cormac was furious. Although now that Bryce's power has been revealed, she has an equal, if not greater, claim to the sword than Rune even does. Once they've recovered from the shock of Cormac's announcement, Bryce and Hunt head home to find the doors to their apartment ajar. Fearing the worst, they head inside on high alert and find Ethan Holstrom injured and unconscious on the floor. Along the seabed of the Haldrian Sea, Tharion has been sent on a mission to retrieve Sophie's body by the River Queen. Tharion believes that this mission has been given to him as punishment for upsetting the River Queen's daughter, whom he has been tied into a betrothal with since he slept with her many years ago. The River Queen was alerted to Sophie's presence the second she entered the water and wishes to search her body for information on the Thunderbirds. After 3.5 hours, Tharion discovers the lead blocks that we used to drag Sophie below water, but her shackles are unlocked and her body is missing. After relaying this information to the River Queen, she orders him to keep searching for Sophie or her brother. Back at Bryce's apartment, Ethan reveals that he's been kicked out of the pack for defending Bryce against a nasty comment that Sabine has made in a news article about the attack on Lunathian in the spring. Bryce lets him stay at her apartment. In Fyro, Rune is challenging his father on his decision to force Bryce to marry Cormac. Cormac comments that Rune's own betrothal to Hypaxia is unorthodox, as her father was a powerful necromancer, a very undesirable branch of witchcraft, and her half-sister is also the Hind. The Autumn King tells Rune that the main purpose of Bryce's marriage is to help keep the bloodline strong, as he fears that the magic of the Fae has weakened with every generation. The next day, Hunt heads to work at the Comitium to meet their new Arch-Governor Celestina. All seems a little bit too good to be true when she lives up to her reputation as a kind and fair leader, up until she informs Hunt, Naomi and Isaiah that as their Triari is so depleted, they will be joined by members of Sandriel's former Triari, Pollux Antonius and Baxian Argos, aka the Hammer and the Hellhound, Hunt's past torturers. Bryce is called to collect Hunt from a Comitium cell where he was put to cool off after attacking Pollux on sight. Tharion discovers a handful of suspicious emails in Sophie's inbox called Dusk's Truth and Project Thur. He also finds a clue to a location in Crescent City where Sophie was told she would be safe if she needed to lie low. Tharion looks up the email sender and discovers that it was Danica. After finding evidence that Emil escaped Ulfian and arrived in Valbara, Tharion meets up with Bryce and Hunt to ask if they were aware of Danica's involvement with human rebels, leading them to join the search for Emil and potentially his sister before Ulfian or the Asteri find them first. Bryce questions Fury to find out if she has any information about Danica ever working with the rebels. Fury says that she had no idea, but reveals that Danica was a bloodhound, a rare type of wolf shifter that can scent people's bloodlines. Bryce and Rune arrive at Bryce's apartment to find Ethan and Tharion waiting for them there, along with a white cat, Adis. Adis asks Bryce if she has learned to use her powers yet, claiming he knew the last Starborn Princess Thea and that she had a multitude of gifts. Adis then challenges the legend of the first Starborn Prince, Prince Peleus, claiming that he actually only gained his title after he slew Thea, stole her sword and forcibly wed her daughter Helena, making him the villain of the story, not the hero as believed by the Fae. He asks the group if they're going to do anything about the Endless War, claiming it is the same war that they fought 15,000 years ago and the same war that Hunt has also fought. Adis asks them to question the origins of their world and the legitimacy of their histories, which were all written by the Asteri. He tells Bryce that Jesper's library from the gallery is all that exists of the truth before the Asteri came to Midgard, and asks why she hasn't done anything with this knowledge yet, before telling her that the armies of hell will strike at her command. He then drops a bombshell, revealing that Cormac is Agent Silverbow, the Ophian rebel who is in love with and aided Sophie. Ethan is left alone at Bryce's apartment, accidentally breaks her coffee table, and finds papers papers pertaining to the origin of the Asteri that were hidden there by Danica, the original owner of the apartment. Meanwhile, Cormac asks Rune to try and communicate with an Ophian agent named Daybright using his mind speak abilities. He reveals that Ophian are trying to organize a hit on the Spine, the main railroad through Pangera, key to the transport of military supplies. Daybright is their main contact on this mission, but they lost contact with them after Sophie's death. Rune agrees to try. A prince of the pit, Apollyon, visits Hunt in his sleep, echoing Adis's message from earlier. He advises Hunt that he is not using the gifts he's been given as he should, and muses that Bryce and Hunt are similar in ability, both being conduits. Before Hunt returns to the waking world, Apollyon warns him that the Northern Rift is groaning and he can smell war on the horizon. Rune establishes contact with Agent Daybright for the first time and assumes the alias Agent Knight. Hunt, Isaiah, and Naomi are called into a meeting with Celestina, where they see a very bruised and bloody Pollux and Baxian. Baxian tells his boss that Pollux tried to force himself onto a female at a bar, and Baxian stepped in to stop him, resulting in a fight between the two. Celestina clearly finds Pollux's behaviour abhorrent, but tells him that after speaking to the Asteri, she has decided he deserves a second chance, implying that the decision has actually been taken out of her hands. She also announces that she is to be mated to the Archangel Ephraim at a ceremony in a few weeks. Her body language and word choice once again alludes to this being a decision out of her hands. She asks Hunt to stay behind after the meeting and tells him that she was once friends with Sahar and was sympathetic to her cause, even trying to buy Hunt more than once to save him from Sandriel, but was repeatedly denied by the Asteri. Reapers ambush Bryce and Rune on their way to training, snatching Rune and dragging him into the sewers. Bryce follows, and the Reapers pass along a second message from Apollyon that he is ready to strike and wishes to fight a worthy opponent, a Starborn at full power. The Reapers then become aggressive and Cormac teleports in to help the duo out. He hands Bryce Rune's Star Sword. The second she draws it, it emanates a blinding light similar to the one on her chest, and she uses it to kill one of the Reapers, a supposedly unkillable creature. Bryce asks Jessica for 2 death marks and uses them to gain access to the Bone Quarter for herself and Hunt, so they can question the Underking on why he sent Reapers to attack them and find out whether Emil may be hiding out there. The Underking claims that none of his Reapers are missing, and that the common belief that Reapers cannot roam very far from the lands that they preside over is a myth. He also dismisses their belief that Sophie or Emil could be seeking sanctuary in his realm. Bryce and Hunt start to suspect that they aren't going to be able to leave the Bone Quarter without a fight after the Underking reveals to them that the Sleeping City, the eternal resting place for worthy Vanir, is a comforting lie created by mortals. In reality, after the souls of the dead have resided in the Bone Quarter for enough centuries that any living soul will have forgotten they ever existed, the Underking shepherds them through the Dead Gate, where they turn into second light and are absorbed into the energy grid that powers the city, with the Underking taking a little nibble out of them as they pass through. The arrival of Ephraim and his Triari for his meeting with Celestina brings the Hind and Co to Crescent City, which is how we are introduced to Mordok, a powerful dreadwolf and the Hind's second in command, who Ethan reveals to be Danica's father. Rune and Ethan go for a drink at a bar to look inconspicuous and have their first run-in with the Hind and the Harpy. Meanwhile, Bryce and Hunt are trying to make it out of the Bone Quarter alive, battling the Underking's shepherd, a demon that resembles a dog and can split itself into 3 parts. Hunt thinks back on what Apollyon told him about Bryce and himself both being conduits and fires his lightning into Bryce, who is wielding the Star Sword. The energy travels through her and is channeled through the sword, essentially making Hunt her supersized battery and magnifying both of their abilities. Tharion sees lightning rippling over the city from under the surface of the river and saves Bryce and Hunt from the Bone Quarter on a water skimmer, fighting off Sobex as they go. Both groups meet back at Bryce's apartment and debrief before Hunt is called to the Commission by Celestina to prepare for Ephraim's arrival. Hunt returns to the apartment to protect Bryce after Sabine arrives unexpectedly, mad at Bryce for harboring Ethan and interfering with wolf business once again. As Hunt and Bryce start to level up their relationship, Ethan moves in with Rune, Declan and Flynn to escape Hunt, Bryce and her apartment's thin walls. He muses on the first time he met Bryce and how he fell in love with her instantly as he heads out to meet up with Tharion. Celestina punishes Hunt for leaving the work event early the night before, ordering him to live in the barracks for the next 2 weeks. Searching for answers to Emil's potential whereabouts, Bryce, Tharion and Ethan visit the Mystics. Vanir, with the ability to travel between worlds, kept in stasis and fed questions by the astronomer, a powerful sorcerer. After receiving the news about the Underking harvesting souls, Ethan is concerned about his brother's soul and so asks the mystics if they can find out what happened to Connor. One of the mystics travels to the depths of hell in pursuit of Ethan's answer, where they encounter Thanatos, who takes possession of the mystic to converse with our heroes himself. After confirming that Bryce is the one that his brothers have spoken about, he sends his host into respiratory failure, causing Bryce, Ethan, and Tharian to free the mystics before they can drown in their immersion tanks, and causing the astronomer to throw them all out. The following week, Declan finally manages to compile all of the footage of Danica from the cameras at Griffin Antiquities, revealing that she had been looking into the lineage of shifters, stealing moments when Bryce was out of the room to take photos of pages from the books in Jessica's hidden library. Bryce visits the Prime of the Wolves, who tells her that Danica had been looking into the first Fendir ancestors that entered this world. He tells her of lore that is passed through word of mouth through the wolf generations, that they were once something else before they allowed the Asteri to collar them. When Bryce gets home, she finds Cormac waiting on the doorstep with news. The Ophian attack on the spine was successful, and they managed to acquire a prototype of a new veneer mech suit that they are bringing to the Coronal Islands, 2 hours outside of Crescent City. Bryce visits Celestina to request Hunt be allowed to return home for a night to visit her parents, aka go to the Coronal Islands and ask Ophian Command not to turn the mech suit and other lethal weapons over to Pippa Spetsos and her Lightfall division. Celestina agrees and ends Hunt's punishment altogether, allowing him to return home to Bryce after stewing in the barracks for one more night. Ethan returns to the mystics to ask more questions about Connor and finds the female they freed alone and still outside of her tank. She tells him the astronomer is out getting parts to fix her tank, but the other two are back in stasis. He asks if she can give him any more information on Connor, and she says that she doesn't have access to the information from the other mystics' journeys, despite them all being connected inside of the tanks. Ethan intends to leave it at that until he scents the female and realizes that she is a wolf. Outraged that she has been sold to the astronomer and pretty much kept as a prisoner, he vows to release her. She tells him that she has known no other life and doesn't wish to leave, but takes his name in case she changes her mind in the future. On his way out, he swipes a box containing the astronomer's captured fire sprites. The morning after, Cormac teleports Bryce, Rune, Hunt, and Tharian to their rendezvous point with Pippa and Lightfall on Coronal Islands, where Hunt is to use his mechanical expertise to take a look at the new Asteri-made veneer mech suits. Hunt is horrified when he realizes that the suits are a mix of metal and Gaussian stone, designed to drain the first light out of the underground power cables so that they can make lethal energy weapons on the spot. He urges Ophian to find the scientists that created them, kill them, and destroy their work, as he believes these suits will turn the battleground into more of a bloodbath than it already is. Pippa essentially laughs at him and, showing her hatred of veneer, orders the crew that transported the weaponry to the islands executed. After she leaves to meet with Command, Hunt uses his lightning to destroy the suit, all of Lightfall's trucks at the base, and a truck full of brimstone missiles. Bryce creates a distraction with her starlight so the group can escape, stealing a boat and fleeing into the ocean. Hunt sees the familiar hound running along the coast and recognizes it as Baxian, who lifts a paw to the west, seemingly warning the group of something. Hunt deduces that where Baxian is, the hind must not be far behind. The group are stranded with no escape route when the hind approaches on a wave skimmer, stopping to talk to them. As with Sophie, she shows them a rock and drops it into the ocean, telling them they can either go with her or sink to the seafloor with the rock. When Bryce and the group are just about out of options, an Omega warship approaches from beneath, rescuing them from the hind and the rest of Sandriel's Triari. As a response to the hind threatening Bryce, Hunt starts to summon his lightning and is now unable to release it. Rune knows that it is likely because Bryce and Hunt are true mates in the way that the Fae mate, and that she is the only one who can now calm him down. A young marewoman from their rescue team tells them that they mean no harm and welcomes them aboard one of the 6 city ships of the Ocean Queen's court beneath. Meanwhile, at Rune's house, Declan, Flynn, and Ethan free the astronomer's captured fire sprites, discovering that one of them is actually a dragon shifter. She warns them that the astronomer will hunt them down to reclaim his property. Aboard the Ocean Queen's city ship, Cormac finds out that the vessel that they are on also picked up Sophie Renast, but they were too late to save her life. The group go down to the morgue so that Cormac can mourn the death of Sophie, but the plot thickens when the coroner points out a series of numbers carved into her shoulder and asks if anybody knows what they might mean. In the morning, they're all deposited back in Crescent City, city and find that the Hind seemingly has not alerted the authorities to their rebel sympathies. Shortly after they make it home, Baxian visits them, demanding they let him in on whatever it is they're doing. They feign innocence, claiming that they don't know what he's talking about. Baxian outs himself as a rebel sympathizer and tells them to find him when they want real answers. Rune heads home to meet his fiery new roommates. Bryce reveals to Hunt that she has conveniently known where Emil is for a while, as she has sent him to the Viper Queen. Hunt is understandably furious and they go to the meat market to meet him, where he reveals that he is not actually a Thunderbird. His sister just told everybody that he was so that they would prioritize rescuing him, thinking that he was of value to them. Bryce asks Fury to take Emil to his new home with her parents. Rune asks Bryce to come over and help him figure out what to do with the 3 sprites and Ariadne the dragon. Nobody wants to return them to the astronomer, and so Bryce calls Jessica to see if she can pull any strings to convince the astronomer to allow them to buy their freedom. Upon hearing that Bryce has been using her official title as Princess Bryce Danan to get herself advantages, the Autumn King insists that she become an official princess of the Fae, making Hunt, as her mate, a prince. Bryce is furious, especially when her father insists that she also keep up her engagement with Cormac. Hypaxia visits Rune and asks him if he could spare a couple of members of the Orcs to guard her, revealing that she doesn't trust her coven. Rune suggests Ethan, who agrees, providing that Hypaxia then uses her necromantic powers to contact Connor. Hypaxia sees it will be possible at the next solstice. Bryce calls Hypaxia and schedules in some girl time. They head out to a bar with Ethan and Ari on guard duty. Afterwards, they take a stroll by the river where Deathstalker demons attack Ethan, taking him out of the fight before cornering the 2 women. They manage to take down the 2 demons between them, and Hypaxia manages to heal Ethan. They notice Ari's absence during the fight and realize that the Dragon Shifter has abandoned them and fled. Tharian, looking for a place to stay on land, asks if he can move in with Rune and the guys. After spending their meetings growing closer, Rune and Agent Day agree to meet in real life and reveal their identities at midnight at the Solstice Fate Party that will be held by the Archangels. One of my favorite things about this book is that Rune is essentially being catfished through the entire thing. 2 weeks later, on the eve of the party, Bryce arrives at the Fate with Cormac as her escort and announces to the Archangels and Asteri that Hunt is her mate, publicly ending her engagement to Cormac, as in the eyes of the Fae, true mates are equal to a married couple. Hypaxia tries to talk to her sister, the Hind, for the first time, as they were kept apart their entire lives, only to be given the cold shoulder. Rune leaves Hypaxia to talk to her sister and heads to his rendezvous point with Agent Day. He sees the Harpy lurking in the shadows. For a moment, he's terrified that Agent Day may indeed be the Harpy, but when he gives the code word, it's clear that the Harpy does not recognize it. Rune realizes how this meeting could very easily put himself and Agent Day in danger and heads back into the party, passing the Hind on his way back in. Meanwhile, Hunt and Bryce are looking for a private place to slip away to. They break into a cloakroom and are startled to find Hypaxia and Celestina in there, clothes disheveled and faces flushed. Hunt and Bryce vow to keep their relationship a secret. Rune bails on the party and contacts Agent Day through their psychic link, apologizing for endangering her. She reveals that she did go to the meeting place and saw the danger, also seeing Rune's true identity. Hypaxia tries to contact Connor as promised, but the Underking answers instead. He confirms that Connor is currently still resting in the Bone Quarter, but if they don't get Bryce to meet him at Erd's Shrine the following day, he will feed Connor and the pack of devils to the Dead Gate. Apollonian visits Bryce in her dreams to check on her progress and reveals that the last Starborn Princess, Thea, was Adis's great love and that Hel fought with her against Prince Peleus. He also claims that the Reapers that attacked Bryce and Rune were not his. The morning after, Tharian peruses the meat market looking for information to take beneath to pacify the River Queen. He discovers that Ari has fled to the Viper Queen, and so he contacts Flynn and they meet with her. He then starts to form a plan to take Ari beneath and give her to the River Queen to buy himself favor with his queen and more time above the water. Hypaxia and Ethan make it back to Bryce and pass on the Underking's message. The group immediately head out to meet with him, where he tells them that the Reapers that attacked them came from the Eternal City, before he sells them out to Ophian's Lightfall Legion and Pippa Spetsos, who still has a score to settle with them. After receiving a charge from Hunt, Bryce teleports to one of the gates and broadcasts a message throughout the city that Ophian are attacking Erd's Shrine. The Hammer and the Hind come to deal with the attack, while Bryce teleports Rune and Hypaxia to safety, draining all of her magic and energy by the time she returns for Hunt. Bryce and Hunt think that they're trapped in the temple and about to be discovered when the Hellhound Baxian arrives and shows them to a secret exit behind Erd's throne. Bryce questions why and how he keeps conveniently showing up when they need him and what his ulterior motive is, and he reveals that he's Danica's mate. Bryce is stunned and makes him prove it, which he does, filling in the gaps in Bryce's knowledge of the years leading up to Danica's death. Bryce asks him if the string of numbers that Sophie carved into her arm sound familiar to him, and he tells them that he gave those numbers to Danica and they correspond to a system of numbering rooms in the Asteri archives. Baxian saw Sandriel taken into the room when he worked for her, coming out white-faced and shaken. He passed the information to Danica, who in turn passed it to Sophie, who then spent 3 years trying to get inside. Bryce asks Declan to hack into the archives, and while the security system is ironclad, he discovers that the one on the surveillance files is not, and confirms that Sophie did indeed gain access to that room, where she found the information powerful enough to destroy the Asteri forever. Hunt's blood pressure soars when Bryce makes it clear that she also intends to gain access to that room and discover what the Asteri have been hiding. Anticipating the worst at the Asteri archives, Ethan and Tharion try to put their affairs in order. Tharion breaks his engagement with the River Queen's daughter, hoping that he would be able to avoid her wrath, but that proves futile when she runs to tell her mother, and so Tharion sells himself into the Viper Queen's employ for protection from the River Queen. Meanwhile, Ethan visits the Prime at Moonwood, asking for help freeing the Wolf Mystic. Sabine tells him it is no concern of theirs. On his way out, the Prime stops Ethan and asks if she smells like embers and snow. When Ethan confirms that she does, the Prime tells him that Sabine is not the only Fendir heir. Ethan vows to free her so that he can help to realize Danica's dream of the wolves being free of Sabine. He texts Bryce to let her know he won't be accompanying them to the archives. Rune and Agent Day take their relationship to the next level, psychically, and Rune tells her about their plan to infiltrate the archives. Day tells him it's a suicide mission before she's abruptly snatched from their conversation. She tries to give him a warning, saying they know and the dungeons before the link is broken. Rune takes this to mean that Day has been captured, so first thing in the morning, Rune tells Bryce that he will be accompanying them so that he can rescue Agent Day. When Bryce agrees, they turn their attention to planning their mission, using maps of the Crystal Palace provided by Fiore. Bryce sends a text to Juniper, telling her that she loves her. The evening before the mission, Rune finds Cormac in a bar where the Avalon Prince apologizes to Rune and tells him that his father broke anything that was ever good inside of him and that he envies that the Autumn King never managed to do the same to Rune. Hunt sneaks into the commission in the middle of the night to retrieve the weapons he keeps in the barracks. On his way out, he's surprised to find Celestina blocking the elevators. They have a very brief cryptic conversation in which she says that if he ever needs an ally, she hopes he will count on her. Hunt finds no evidence in their words that she knows about their rebel activities, and so he just agrees and flies home. While Bryce and Rune are waiting for Cormac to teleport them into the Crystal Palace of the Asteri, Rune tells Bryce that she outranks the Autumn King in power, and if they make it out of here, he wants to support her in a coup to overthrow their father and put her on the throne. Bryce has absolutely no desire to be Queen of the Fae, but Cormac eavesdrops on the tail end of their conversation and agrees with Rune. Bryce gains entry to the room that Sophie and Danica led her to. Inside, she finds 7 pipes and 7 plaques, each marked with the name of one of the Asteri. While Bryce puzzles out what this means, a bright flare of first light startles her. She turns back to the pipes to see first light shooting through them, activating readings on each of the plaques, indicating the Asteri's power levels. With horror, Bryce realizes that the Asteri need first light to survive, and have built their cities and the whole of Midgard in such a way that they are able to feed off the first light being fed into the quartz gates in Crescent City, the power generated by the drop, and the second light from the dead, amongst other ways. One pipe remains inactive for the Asteri that was devoured by the Prince of the Pit. With minutes left until she's due to head back to Rune and Hunt, Bryce finds a room labelled Dusk, and remembering Danica's emails to Sophie, she heads in to explore. Getting impatient while waiting for Bryce to return, Rune gets a head start on rescuing Agent Day and breaks off from Hunt. On his way down to the dungeons, he is intercepted by Mordok. Meanwhile, Cormac and Ethan are racing Pivot Spetsos to intercept the doctors and scientists that created the Vanir mech suits, to provide a distraction for Bryce and also to stop the technology from falling into Spetsos' hands. Despite agreeing to limit casualties, Cormac shoots a doctor in the head and then starts to eliminate the rest of the Asteri scientists. When Pippa arrives, he tells Ethan to run, and Ethan realizes that Cormac never intended to leave here alive, and he also intends to take Pippa and the mech suit knowledge down with him. Meanwhile, in the Dusk Room, Bryce discovers that the Asteri have travelled through many worlds, including Hell, before coming to Midgard, conquering and then leaving when they were discovered, or if the inhabitants proved not to be nutritious enough for their needs. The notes of Midgard indicate that the original inhabitants, which are the humans of the planet, were no good, but the planet was capable of supporting other species. And so the Asteri opened the portals in the northern and southern rifts, and the Vanir poured into Midgard. However, Hel followed them through the cracks in between worlds and tried to convince some of the Vanir of the Asteri's true nature. Bryce's intel mission is brought to a halt when Regulus, the bright hand of the Asteri, tells her through the intercom that she will not be able to find the Asteri's homeworld, as they left it so long ago that its name has been long forgotten. Regulus tells Bryce that he wants her to reopen the rifts. When she says that she can't, he tells her that as she is a starborn fae and wields the horn, she very much can. He tells her that her ancestors stole the horn and the starborn sword from the Asteri in their homeworld, a world where the Asteri had built a warrior race to be their army, a race that stood as the prototypes for the angels of Midgard, the Illyrian warriors. He confides that Princess Thea managed to close the portals between worlds 15,000 years ago, cutting the Asteri off from the rest of their species and leaving them stranded in the cosmos, and now they need Bryce to reopen the portals to undo this. Danica's bloodhound gift inspired her to investigate her bloodline all the way back to their entry into Midgard, leading to her discovery that the shifters descend from Fae. Not the same type of Fae as Bryce, who descends from the Akatar Fae, but a type where all Fae had an animal form, probably the Throne of Glass Fae. The Mare are also descendants of the same Fae, but the Asteri feared that two powerful Fae species with magic would be likely to unify against them in the future, and so they bred the pointed ears and the magic out of the shifters and obscured the truth for enough generations that the Vanir now all believe that they are different species. Unwilling to hear any more, Bryce teleports back to Hunt and finds him on his knees, bound with Gaussian manacles and at the mercy of the Harpy. Tharian manages to escape and starts to head back to Valbara, but not before seeing the lab explode with Cormac, Pippa and the mech suits inside. Hunt and Bryce are brought to the Asteri dungeons where they find Rune, also manacled and in a cell. The Harpy starts to antagonize the trio, slicing Rune's face with a knife while Bryce begs her to stop. As the Harpy is about to cut Rune's throat, the Hind barrels into her, revealing her identity as Agent Daybright, and with Rune's help, decapitates the Harpy. To keep the communication lines open, the Hind can't let her double agent status be revealed, and so she loosens Bryce's manacles before Pollux arrives and pretends that Bryce is responsible for the death of the Harpy. The Hind whispers something into Bryce's ear before herself, Rune and Hunt are led to the Asteri throne room. Regulus essentially tells them that everything that they've ever done is conveniently part of his master plan, and that it was him posing as Adis in Bryce's apartment. Bryce says that she will open a portal for them if they let Hunt and Rune go free, obviously knowing that they would never actually do that. She says her goodbyes to Hunt and Rune, and on their signal blasts light towards Regulus. Hunt follows up with a blast of lightning while Baxian reveals his true allegiance, tackling Mordok to allow Bryce to make a break for it. Regulus follows, hurling his power at Bryce while she runs towards the Asteri's gate. She opens a portal and launches herself through, falling through oblivion into another world. In the Crystal Palace, Rune, Hunt and Baxian are taken prisoner by the Asteri. Hunt is once again tattooed with the halo of thorns that bound his powers as a slave. Meanwhile, Bryce touches down on a manicured lawn in what she thinks is hell. A winged male blindfolds her and takes her into an elegant parlor and sits her in a comfortable chair. Bryce asks to see Prince Adis over and over, but there is clearly a language barrier. A group of Fae enter the home, and when none of them understand Bryce either, she tries the only other language she knows, which is Ancient Fae. One of the Fae females appears shocked and tells Bryce in Ancient Fae that nobody has spoken that language in this world for 15,000 years, and that she also isn't in hell. A male from the group steps forward and says, "Hello, Bryce Quinlan. My name is Rhysand," thus unlocking the mass multiverse. Back in Valbara, Ethan sets up a vigil outside of the astronomer's lair. He isn't alone, as he knows that Amelie Ravenscroft is lurking in the shadows, waiting to harm the mystic if she gets the chance. Ethan receives a call from Flynn, telling him that literally everything has gone horribly wrong and that they need him back at the house to fill him in. Ethan is torn, wanting to return to his friends, but unwilling to leave the mystic behind. He breaks into the astronomer's workshop and pleads with the wolf to wake up and come with him, and the book closes with the last Fendir heir opening her eyes. So that was everything that happened in House of Sky and Breath. To be honest, it is not my favourite Sarah J Maas book that has ever existed. I did know when I read it for the first time that there were a lot of slow points in here. We're establishing Ethan and Tharian as characters that are essentially going to be holding down the fort in Midgard, while Hunt and Rune are prisoners and Bryce is off frolicking with Rhysand. So it's kind of understandable why this book was so slow, because those characters needed establishing to a point where we're going to care about them in book 3, but that didn't make reading this any more enjoyable. So I acknowledged those slow parts the first time around and I knew they were there. However, I only realized upon reread that this book is actually just generally not the best. Like, there are tons of conveniences, so many conveniences, so many people popping up to save the day that just happen to be related to somebody else. Danica's been living a whole ass secret life that her best friend literally never noticed. Like, she's a super spy, a rebel. She's writing a thesis on the history of shifters, and somehow Bryce knew absolutely none of this. And then you also have everybody in the corner whispering, "Where did we all actually come from?" every like 25 pages throughout this book. So my feelings on this one are very torn, because I still adore these characters. I still adore this world. And while we're talking about it at the end of this video, when I mention this book, I essentially allude to the fact, and if you've read the book, then you know that when I say the reason I don't like this book is because I don't like the crossover that happens at the end of this. And I want to clarify, because I've had a lot of people say, like, I don't understand why people don't like it. Like, this is epic. This is amazing. Like, Sarah J Maas has been building up to this for years. Absolutely, yes, she has. Like, I made a whole video before the release of House of Sky and Breath talking about all of the clues, without even reading House of Sky and Breath where most of it happens, but all of the clues and all of the ways that the universes, like the Sarah J Maas world, could be linked. So I know that she's been building up to this for years. Like, I've been reading Sarah J Maas for like 9 years now. My issue is that I love these characters and this world so much that I wanted them to have their own story before Rhysand swooped in and saved the day. Because at this point, I just feel like Rhysand is everywhere all of the time. I feel like Rhys and Feyre played too big of a part in Court of Silver Flames, and I don't want them playing a really big part in this series as well. So I kind of was saying that I was reserving my judgment until book 3 before I decided how I truly felt about Crescent City, but I do feel like the ACOTAR cast and potentially the Throne of Glass cast are going to play a bigger part in Crescent City as I would like. And ideally, I would have liked Crescent City to have its own trilogy and for us then to embark upon a plot with the Massverse as a whole. That would have been my ideal resolution. So yeah, I finished up the last one, the House of Earth and Blood video, with my theories on what's going to happen in the next book. I actually don't have too many theories right now, because I feel like anything that I have that's a theory is connected to the Massverse as a whole, and a lot of that is still stuff that I mentioned in that video of like how the worlds are connected that hasn't been officially confirmed yet, like how all of the Fae in this world came from the Dusk Court that conveniently doesn't exist in ACOTAR, even though the rest of them have pairs and like stuff like that. That is it for this wrap up. Down in my comments, please let me know if you find the way that I do these recaps useful, because I'm thinking of doing them potentially for other series going forward. Not everything, because for me to put this much effort into a video and a document, it has to be something that's hyped enough that a lot of people could benefit from the recap. But there are a couple of series I have in mind of doing this for in the future if this is useful. Aside from that, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.